Jake Morrison sat in his chair and tried not to laugh. The huge alien in front of him was waving all four of his arms like a crazy person. The alien's name was Chancellor Vexstar, and he thought he was very important. Right now he was reading from a long piece of paper that glowed with strange blue letters. The room they were in was massive. It was made of some kind of crystal that sparkled in the light. This was the Galactic Council headquarters, floating somewhere in empty space between the stars. Jake had been coming here for 3 years as Earth's ambassador, and he still thought the whole place looked like a fancy shopping mall. Around the room, dozens of different alien species sat in their own special chairs. The bird people called Altarians were fluffing their feathers and making excited chirping sounds. The slug people called molluskins were leaving shiny trails of slime on their seats as they wiggled around happily. There were also the rock people, the tentacle people, and several others that Jake could never remember the names of. They were all very excited because Chancellor Vexstar was declaring war on humanity. Jake looked over at Captain Lisa Hayes, who was sitting next to him. She was supposed to be the military expert, but right now she looked like she was trying not to giggle. Her hand was covering her mouth, and her shoulders were shaking a little bit. Chancellor Vexstar kept reading his declaration in his booming voice. His words echoed around the crystal chamber, making everything sound even more dramatic than it already was. The human species has shown dangerous and unacceptable behavior, Vexstar announced, his eye stalks waving around as he spoke. They expand too quickly across the galaxy. They refuse to follow proper procedures. They do not respect the ancient traditions of civilized space travel. Jake nodded politely as the Chancellor listed all of humanity's supposed crimes. Apparently humans were guilty of colonizing planets too fast. They were also guilty of mining asteroids without asking permission first. The worst crime of all seemed to be that humans kept saying no when the Council told them what to do. Furthermore, Vexstar continued, his voice getting louder and more dramatic, humans have been observed engaging in primitive and violent entertainment. They watch something called action movies and play games that involve pretend fighting. This clearly shows their savage nature. Captain Hayes made a small snorting sound. Jake had to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from smiling. The aliens thought action movies were evidence that humans were dangerous. If only they knew what humans were really capable of. The Chancellor went on for another 20 minutes, listing every single thing the Council didn't like about humanity. They didn't like how humans asked too many questions. They didn't like how humans wanted to explore everything. They especially didn't like how humans refused to pay the Council's civilization taxes that were supposed to help fund galactic peace. Finally, Vexstar reached the end of his speech. He held the glowing paper high above his head with two of his arms while the other two gestured dramatically. Therefore, he declared, the Galactic Council hereby declares a state of war against the human species. We demand immediate surrender and submission to Council authority. All human colonies must be abandoned. All human ships must be surrendered. The species known as humanity will be relocated to a single world under Council supervision. The chamber erupted in alien cheers. The bird people started screaming and flapping their wings. The slug people made wet slapping sounds as they clapped their tentacles together. Even the rock people, who usually didn't show much emotion, were grinding against each other in what Jake assumed was excitement. Chancellor Vexstar waited for the noise to die down. Then he turned his eye stalks toward Jake and Captain Hayes. His expression was smug and confident, like he had just delivered the most devastating news in galactic history. Ambassador Morrison, Vexstar said in his most official voice, you will now deliver humanity's response to this declaration. We expect your immediate and unconditional surrender. Jake stood up slowly. He straightened his simple black suit and adjusted his tie. The tie had a small American flag pin on it, which several aliens had complained about in previous meetings. They said it was too aggressive and militaristic. Jake had kept wearing it anyway. He looked around the chamber at all the expectant alien faces. They were all waiting for him to break down and beg for mercy. Some of them were already making what he assumed were happy noises. Jake cleared his throat and spoke in a calm, clear voice that carried easily through the crystal chamber. "Is that all?" The cheering stopped immediately. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the background humming of the station's machinery seemed to get quieter. Chancellor Vextar SI stalks twitched. He leaned forward in his chair, which was shaped like a giant flower made of metal. "Excuse me?" Vextar said. Jake smiled politely. I said, "Is that all?" "I was waiting for you to get to the serious part." The silence stretched on for several long seconds. Jake could hear Captain Hayes trying not to laugh behind him. He could also hear several aliens whispering to each other in their various languages. "The serious part?" Vextar repeated slowly. "Well, yes," Jake said, spreading his hands in a casual gesture. "That was a very nice speech and everything, but I thought you were building up to something bigger. Like actual threats or demands. That might worry us." One of the bird people made a choking sound. A slug person fell off its chair with a wet splat. Jake continued in the same friendly tone he might use to discuss the weather. "I mean, declaring war is a pretty big step. We humans just assumed you had put some real thought into this. Like maybe you had studied our military capabilities or made some plans for how you were actually going to fight us." Chancellor Vextar SI stalks were now twitching so fast they looked like they might fall off. You dare to question the might of the Galactic Council?" "Oh, I'm not questioning anything," Jake said quickly. "I'm just curious about the details. For instance, how many ships are you planning to send? What kind of weapons do you have? Do you have any experience with actual warfare, or is this more of a learning experience for you?" Captain Hayes stood up next to Jake. She had stopped, trying to hide her amusement, and was now grinning openly. "If you don't mind me asking," she said in her crisp military voice, "what exactly is your battle plan? Are you planning to attack our colonies first, or are you going straight for Earth? Because we'd really like to know so we can prepare appropriately." The aliens were now staring at the two humans like they had grown extra heads. Several of them were whispering furiously to each other. Jake nodded seriously. "That's a good point, Captain. We should probably ask about their logistics, too. How are they planning to supply their forces? Do they have experience with extended military campaigns? What about medical support for their troops? And intelligence gathering," Captain Hayes added. "Have they been studying our defensive capabilities? Do they know where our colonies are located? Have they figured out our military command structure?" Chancellor Vextar was opening and closing his mouth like a fish. His forearms were waving around randomly, and his eye stalks were spinning in circles. We have the greatest military force in the galaxy." He finally managed to sputter. Jake looked interested. "Really? How many ships is that exactly? And when was the last time you actually used them in combat?" The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. He looked around the chamber and saw confusion, uncertainty, and the first hints of fear on dozens of alien faces. Finally, Jake clapped his hands together once, making several aliens jump. "Well," he said cheerfully, "this has been fun, but I should probably get back to Earth and let my people know what's happening. They're going to want to start making preparations." He paused and looked directly at Chancellor Vextar. "Thank you for the warning, by the way. It's always nice when people are polite enough to declare war formally instead of just attacking by surprise. Very civilized of you." Jake and Captain Hayes walked toward the exit, leaving behind a chamber full of very confused and increasingly worried aliens. President Helen Carter walked into the meeting room and immediately knew something was different. Usually, when she called emergency meetings, people looked worried or scared. Today, everyone looked excited. The room was deep underground in the Pentagon's newest section. Most people didn't even know this part existed. The walls were covered with screens showing star maps, ship locations, and colony reports from 50 different worlds. Red lights blinked where human settlements were located, making the galaxy look like a Christmas tree. General Dan Foster stood up when she entered. He was a big man with gray hair and hands that looked like they could crush rocks. Next to him sat Admiral Kate Russell, who ran all of Earth's space forces. She was smaller than the general, but somehow looked even more dangerous. Madam President, General Foster said, we just got Ambassador Morrison's report from the Council. Station, they've officially declared war on us. President Carter sat down at the head of the long table. How long do we have? Hard to say, Admiral Russell replied, pulling up a holographic display in the center of the table. Based on their past behavior, probably a few weeks. They'll want to organize their fleets and make big speeches about how righteous they are. Good, the president said. That gives us time to activate the plans. Colonel Mike Torres, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. He was younger than the others, but had the kind of eyes that saw everything. Madam President, we've been ready for this day since we first met the aliens 20 years ago. Operation Sleeping Giant is ready to go, President Carter nodded. She remembered those early days when humanity had first learned they weren't alone in the universe. The aliens had seemed friendly enough, but there was something about them that made her skin crawl. They were too confident, too sure that humans would just do whatever they were told. Show me what we have, she said, Colonel. Torres touched a button, and the room filled with floating images. Ships, weapons, soldiers, and equipment appeared all around them like ghosts made of light. The aliens think we have about 100 ships, Torres said with a small smile. They're off by quite a bit. The first image showed a massive shipyard, hidden inside an asteroid. Hundreds of warships floated in the darkness, looking like sleeping metal sharks. We have 12 hidden shipyards like this one. Each one can build 50 ships at the same time. Admiral Russell took over the presentation. Every single one of our colony ships was designed to be converted into a warship in under 24 hours. The aliens think they're looking at cargo vessels and passenger transports. They're actually looking at the biggest fleet in galactic history. The next image showed a peaceful farming colony. Families were working in fields while children played near small houses. It looked completely harmless. New Kansas, Colonel Torres said. Population, 50,000 farmers and their families. What the aliens don't know is that every single adult is a military veteran. And those farming tools in their barns are actually military weapons in disguise. President Carter studied the image. How many colonies like this do we have? All of them, General Foster answered. Every human settlement outside of Earth is a military base pretending to be something else. We've been building this for 20 years. The room filled with more images. Mining operations that were actually weapons factories. Research stations that were really spy bases. Trading posts that were secret military supply depots. Everywhere humans had gone in the galaxy, they had prepared for war. Dr. Amy Shun entered the room carrying a tablet computer. She was the head of the Xenobiology Research Division, which meant she knew more about aliens than anyone else on Earth. Sorry I'm late, she said, sitting down at the table. I was putting together our intelligence report on enemy capabilities. What did you find? President Carter asked. Dr. Chun touched her tablet, and new images appeared around the room. These showed various alien species in detail, with red text highlighting their weaknesses. The Zephyrians, who lead the council, are completely dependent on their computer systems, she began. They haven't done anything manually in over 1,000 years. If their computers stop working, they're helpless. The image changed to show the bird-like Altarians. These guys are brave when they're in groups, but they panic completely when separated from their flocks. They also can't fight in the dark because their eyes are designed for daylight. Next came the slug-like molluskins. Cold temperatures make them move very slowly. Anything below 50 degrees and they basically fall asleep. Dr. Chun continued through the list. The rock people were strong but extremely slow. The tentacle people were smart but physically weak. Every species had some critical weakness that human scientists had discovered over the years. What about their technology? Admiral Russell asked. That's the interesting part, Dr. Chun replied. Their ships are bigger than ours and look more impressive, but they're actually thousands of years old. They haven't invented anything new in centuries. They just keep using the same old designs over and over. General Foster leaned back in his chair. so they're not as advanced as they pretend to be. Not even close, Dr. Chun confirmed. They're like people living in a museum. Everything looks fancy, but none of it works very well. President Carter absorbed all of this information. What about their numbers? Colonel Torres pulled up another display. The entire Galactic Council has maybe 10,000 warships total, spread across hundreds of star systems. Most of them are old and haven't been used in actual combat for centuries, and we have 50,000 ships, all brand new, all crewed by people who know how to fight, Admiral Russell said proudly. Plus another 100,000 civilian vessels that can be armed and ready for combat in hours. The president stood up and walked to one of the large screens showing the galaxy. Thousands of red dots marked human settlements, each one looking small and harmless. But now she knew the truth. Each dot was actually a fortress, ready to defend itself or attack enemies. "How long have you all known this day would come?" she asked. "Since the day we met them," General Foster replied. "They looked at us like we were children who needed to be taught how to behave. That's not how you treat equals. That's how you treat people you plan to control. So we've been preparing for war while pretending to be peaceful farmers and traders," President Carter said. "Exactly," Colonel Torres confirmed. "The aliens taught us their languages, showed us their technology, and told us all about their military capabilities. They thought they were educating primitive humans. They were actually giving away all their secrets to their future enemies." Communication alert chimed, and a new face appeared on one of the screens. It was Roy Jackson, a weather-beaten man wearing a cowboy hat. Behind him, the president could see the red desert landscape of New Texas, one of humanity's outer rim colonies. "Madam President," Roy said in his deep voice, "we just got word about the war declaration. The Outer Rim Defense Coalition is ready to go. We've got 2 million volunteers armed and waiting for orders." President Carter smiled. Roy Jackson had been a cattle rancher before becoming the unofficial military leader of the outer colonies. The aliens probably thought he was just a simple farmer. "How many hidden weapons depots do you have out there, Roy?" she asked. "Enough to fight a war for 10 years, Roy replied with a grin. "Maybe longer if we're careful with the ammunition." Admiral Russell brought up a tactical map showing the outer rim colonies. Each one showed massive numbers of ships, weapons, and soldiers. The aliens thought they were looking at helpless farming communities. They were actually looking at the most heavily armed frontier in galactic history. "There's one more thing," Dr. Trim said quietly. "We've been monitoring alien communications for years. They're not just overconfident about fighting us. They actually have no idea how to fight anyone. They've been at peace for so long that they've forgotten how wars work." President Carter returned to her seat. "So let me make sure I understand. The aliens have declared war on a species that has been secretly preparing for this exact situation for 20 years. They think we're weak farmers and traders, but we're actually the most powerful military force in the galaxy. And they have no experience with real combat." "That's about right," General Foster said. "And they just announced their intentions instead of attacking by surprise, giving us time to get ready." "Yes, ma'am." President Carter looked around the room at her military leaders. These people had spent decades preparing for this moment. They had built weapons, trained soldiers, and studied their enemies. They were ready for war. "Gentlemen, ladies," she said finally, "I think the Galactic Council is about to learn why you never pick a fight with humans." The room filled with confident smiles. The war hadn't started yet, but everyone already knew how it would end. Commander Steve Miller sat in his captain's chair aboard the Earthship Liberty and watched the alien fleet approach. Through the large windows of his bridge, he could see dozens of strange-looking vessels coming toward his colony world. The ships were big and shiny, with lots of decorative parts that served no real purpose. The Liberty looked like a simple cargo ship. It was painted dull gray and had none of the fancy decorations that alien ships seem to love. Most people would think it was just another boring transport vessel carrying supplies to the farmers below. Most people would be very wrong. "Captain," said Lieutenant Bob Martinez from his position at the communications console. The alien fleet. Commander is trying to contact us. He sounds pretty angry. Put him through, Steve replied calmly. The main screen flickered, and suddenly the bridge was filled with the image of a large bird-like creature. Its feathers were bright gold and blue, and it had angry yellow eyes. Steve recognized the species as Altarian from the intelligence briefings he had studied. I am Sky Screech of Victory, commander of the Galactic Council War Fleet, the alien announced in a voice that sounded like a parrot trying to be scary. You will surrender immediately or face destruction. Steve looked at the alien for a few seconds, then smiled. That's quite a name you have there. Did you pick it yourself, or did your parents really call you Sky Screech? The alien's feathers puffed up even more. How dare you mock my honored name? I command 200 warships of the mighty Galactic Council. 200? Steve said, sounding impressed. Wow, that's a lot of ships. Hey, Bob, how many ships do we have? Lieutenant Martinez pretended to check his computer screen. Well, sir, in this immediate area we have about 500. But if you count the ships hiding in the asteroid belt and behind the gas giant, it's closer to 800. Sky Screech of Victory's beak fell open. Impossible. Our intelligence reports show only civilian vessels in this system. Oh, you mean those intelligence reports, Steve said, reaching under his chair and pulling out a thick folder. You mean these intelligence reports that we wrote and left where your spies would find them? The alien stared at the folder in shock. Steve opened it and pretended to read. Let's see here. The human colony of New Frontier has no military defenses. The colonists are simple farmers with no combat training. Their ships are slow cargo vessels with no weapons. Did I get that right? You fed us false information? Sky Screech of Victory squawked. Well, not completely false, Steve said thoughtfully. We really are farmers, some of the best in the galaxy, actually. We grow amazing corn. But we're also soldiers, engineers, pilots, and anything else we need to be. Steve stood up from his chair and walked closer to the screen. Would you like to see something cool? Before the alien could answer, Steve nodded to his crew. Lieutenant Martinez pressed a button, and alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Outside, the Liberty began to change. Panels slid open along its hull, revealing rows of weapons that had been hidden inside. The ship's boring gray exterior unfolded like a metal flower, showing sleek armor plating underneath. What had looked like a simple cargo ship suddenly became something that belonged in a science fiction movie. This is impossible, Sky Screech of Victory whispered. Oh, we're just getting started, Steve said cheerfully. All around the alien fleet, space began to fill with new ships. They emerged from behind asteroids where they had been hiding. They came up from the shadow of the planet where alien sensors couldn't detect them. They even rose up from inside the planet's rings, shedding ice and rock like water. Within minutes, the alien fleet of 200 ships found itself surrounded by 800 human vessels. Every single human ship was pointing its weapons at the aliens. On the planet's surface, Sheriff Pete Williams was watching the space battle through a pair of binoculars. Around him, the colonists of New Frontier were going about their daily business. Farmers were tending their crops, children were playing in the streets, and shopkeepers were opening their stores. The only difference was that every single adult was now carrying a military-grade weapon. Sheriff, called Mary Johnson from her position behind what looked like a fruit stand, should we activate the surface defenses? Pete lowered his binoculars and smiled. Mary had been his deputy for 3 years, but the aliens probably thought she was just a simple shopkeeper selling apples and oranges. Go ahead, Mary. Let's show our visitors what a farming community looks like when it's annoyed. Mary pressed a button hidden under her cash register. All around the town, things began to change. The water tower in the center of town split open, revealing a massive energy cannon. The old barn on the edge of town unfolded to show rows of missile launchers. Even the children's playground transformed, with the swing sets and slides sliding away to reveal defensive turrets. In the hills around the settlement, more weapons appeared. What the aliens had thought were simple mining operations turned out to be heavily fortified military positions. Every piece of farming equipment that the colonists used was actually a disguised weapon or vehicle. Back in space, Sky Screech of Victory was staring at his tactical display in horror. Red dots representing human ships surrounded his fleet completely. His own ships, which had seemed so impressive just minutes before, now looked small and helpless. "Commander," his navigation officer chirped nervously. "What are your orders?" Sky Screech of Victory didn't know what to say. In all his years of military service, he had never actually fought a real battle. The Galactic Council hadn't been in a serious war for over 1,000 years. Most of their military experience came from intimidating primitive species that surrendered immediately. "This cannot be happening," he muttered to himself. "Commander." Miller's voice came through the communication system again. "Sky Screech of Victory, are you still there? I wanted to ask you something." The alien looked back at the screen where the human captain was still smiling pleasantly. "What?" Sky Screech managed to ask. "Well, I was wondering about your battle plan," Steve said. "I mean, you showed up here with 200 ships to attack a defended position held by 800 ships. That seems like poor planning. Did someone make a mistake with the numbers? We were told you had no defenses," Sky Screech replied weakly. "And you believe that without checking for yourselves?" Steve asked, sounding genuinely curious. "You didn't send scouts? You didn't do reconnaissance? You just flew straight into what could have been a trap?" Sky Screech of Victory realized that was exactly what they had done. The Council's intelligence services had given him a report, and he had believed it completely. It had never occurred to him that the humans might be lying. "I have an idea," Steve continued. "Why don't you surrender? We promise to treat you well. We'll give you comfortable places to stay, good food and medical care if anyone is injured. Surrender?" Sky Screech of Victory squawked. "Warriors of the Galactic Council do not surrender." "Okay," Steve said with a shrug. "Then I guess we'll have to disable your ships. Try not to take this personally." What happened next was less like a battle and more like a demonstration. The human ships opened fire with weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Instead of trying to destroy the alien vessels, the humans used precise shots to disable their engines, weapons, and communication systems within 30 minutes. The entire alien fleet was floating helplessly in space. Not a single alien had been killed, but none of their ships could move or fight back. Sky Screech of Victory sat in his command chair and stared at the screens showing his disabled fleet. His proud warships were now just expensive pieces of floating junk. "Commander Miller," he said quietly into his communicator. "Yes, we surrender." "I thought you might," Steve replied kindly. "Don't worry. We'll take good care of you. And when this war is over, maybe we can teach you how to grow some of that corn I mentioned. You might like it." Down on the planet, Sheriff Pete Williams was already organizing the prisoner facilities. The colonists had prepared for this possibility, just like they had prepared for everything else. As the alien prisoners were brought down to the surface, many of them seemed confused by how well they were being treated. They had expected torture or execution, but instead they got warm meals and comfortable beds. One young Altarian pilot named Wing Flutter of Confusion approached Sheriff Williams during the evening meal. "Why are you being so kind to us?" The alien asked. "We came here to conquer your world." Pete smiled and handed the alien a cup of coffee. "Son, we're not angry at you personally. You were just following orders. Besides, treating prisoners well is the human way. We fight hard, but we don't take it out on folks who can't fight back." Wing Flutter of Confusion tasted the coffee and his eyes widened in surprise. "This is delicious. What is it?" "Coffee," Pete replied. "It's one of our favorite drinks. We'll teach you how to make it if you'd like." The young alien looked around at the other prisoners who were also being treated with kindness and respect by their human captors. This was nothing like what the Council had told them about the savage humans. Back on the Council station, Chancellor Vexstar was receiving the reports of the defeat with growing panic. His eye stalks were twitching so fast they looked like they might fly off his head. Admiral Kate Russell stood in the command center deep beneath the Pentagon and watched the giant screen that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked human positions, while blue dots showed alien worlds. For 20 years, the red dots had been slowly spreading outward. Now it was time to show the aliens just how far humans had really spread. Operation Paperwork is ready to begin, announced Captain Brad Thompson, who would be leading the mission. He was a tall man with calm eyes who had spent years studying alien culture and psychology. Next to him stood Colonel Jenny Martinez, whose Special Forces teams were among the best soldiers humanity had ever produced. "Remind me why we're calling it Operation Paperwork," Admiral Russell said with a small smile. "Because we're going to capture all their important documents and files," Captain Thompson replied. "Plus, bureaucrats hate paperwork, so it seemed appropriate." The plan was simple but brilliant. Instead of attacking alien military bases or destroying their fleets, the humans were going to hit something much more important to the Galactic Council, their administrative centers. "Target selection is complete," reported Dr. Kevin Park, the fleet's expert on alien psychology. He had studied every species in the Council for years and knew exactly how their governments worked. "We've identified 6 key worlds that handle all the Council's important business." The screen changed to show detailed maps of alien worlds. Each one had a big government building marked with a red circle. "The Council runs everything through paperwork and committees," Dr. Park explained. "If we capture their records and disrupt their bureaucracy, they won't be able to organize any kind of response." Admiral Russell nodded. "And we're not going to hurt any civilians?" "Absolutely not," Colonel Martinez said firmly. "My teams have strict orders. We go in, download their computers, take their files, and leave. No unnecessary violence, no destruction of property, and definitely no harm to innocent people." "What about their military forces?" Admiral Russell asked. Captain Thompson pulled up another display showing alien defensive positions. "Most of their important worlds have very light defenses. They've been at peace for so long that they've gotten careless about security. The first target was a world called Zephyr Prime, the main administrative center for the entire Galactic Council. It was a planet covered in enormous office buildings where thousands of alien bureaucrats worked to manage their empire. Captain Thompson's ship, the Earth vessel Invisible Hand, approached Zephyr Prime using the latest human stealth technology. The ship was completely invisible to alien sensors, looking like empty space even when viewed directly. "Approaching the target," reported Lieutenant Frank Davis from the pilot's seat. "Their sensors aren't detecting us at all." Through the ship's windows, they could see Zephyr Prime spinning slowly in space. The planet's surface was covered with gleaming towers that reached up into the clouds. It looked peaceful and prosperous, like a world that had never known war. "Remember," Captain Thompson told his crew over the intercom, "we're not here to conquer this place. We're here to borrow some information and leave a message." The Invisible Hand landed silently in a park near the planet's main government complex. The building was enormous, stretching for miles in every direction and rising hundreds of stories into the sky. Millions of alien workers went in and out of its doors every day. Colonel Martinez and her Special Forces team prepared for their mission. They wore suits that made them nearly invisible and carried weapons that could stun enemies without causing permanent harm. Each soldier also carried a large bag full of gift packages. "Team Alpha, you take the central data core," Martinez said. Into her radio, "Team Beta, hit the communication center. Team Charlie, secure the main administrative offices. Remember, we're guests here, so let's be polite." The human soldiers moved through the alien building like ghosts. Their technology was so advanced that alien security systems couldn't detect them. They walked past confused guards and surprised office workers, heading straight for their targets. In the central data core, Sergeant Tim Baker connected his portable computer to the alien mainframe. Within minutes, he was downloading decades of Council records, including military plans, economic data, and secret communications between different alien species. "This is incredible," he whispered into his radio. "They keep records of everything. Every decision, every meeting, every argument between species, it's all here. Team Beta reached the communication center where they found a room full of alien technicians managing messages between thousands of different worlds. The technicians were small, furry creatures who looked like space hamsters. "Excuse me," said Corporal Lisa Green politely to one of the startled aliens. "We need to borrow your communication system for a few minutes." "Don't worry, we'll put everything back the way we found it." The alien technician just stared at her with big round eyes, too shocked to move. Meanwhile, Team Charlie had reached the main administrative offices, where they found hundreds of alien bureaucrats working at their desks. Most of them didn't even notice the invisible humans walking among them. Staff Sergeant Mike Wong approached the desk of what appeared to be a high-ranking official, a tall alien with purple skin and 6 arms who was busy stamping documents. "Sir," Wong said, becoming visible and causing the alien to fall backward off his chair, "we're here to collect some files. We'll be done in just a few minutes." The purple alien made a series of clicking sounds that Wong's translator identified as panic. "Please don't be alarmed," Wong continued politely. "We're not here to hurt anyone. We just need to look at some of your records." All around the building, similar scenes were playing out. Human soldiers appeared from nowhere, politely asked for access to alien computers and files, and began copying everything they could find. The aliens were too shocked to resist. Within 2 hours, the humans had downloaded the complete administrative records of the Galactic Council. They knew every secret, every plan, and every weakness of the alien government. But before they left, Colonel Martinez had one more job to do. She and her team set up small tables in the main lobby of the government building. On each table, they placed hundreds of small packages wrapped in colorful paper. "Attention, everyone," Martinez announced through the building's intercom system. "We're from Earth, and we've left some gifts for you. Please feel free to take one. Package per person. Thank you for your cooperation, and we apologize for any inconvenience." The packages contained Earth coffee, chocolate bars, and small devices that could play human music in movies. Each package also included a note written in the local alien language. The note said, "Greetings from the people of Earth. We hope you enjoy these samples of human culture. We believe this war is unnecessary and would prefer to be friends. Please consider encouraging your leaders to make peace. Thank you for your time." As the human teams prepared to leave, they found that many of the alien workers had gathered in the lobby to examine the gift packages. Some were already tasting the chocolate and making happy sounds. A young Zephyrian clerk approached Colonel Martinez nervously. "Are you really going to leave?" she asked. "Yes," Martinez replied with a smile. "We got what we came for. Now we're going home. But aren't you going to conquer our world?" The clerk asked, confused. "Why would we want to do that?" Martinez said, "You seem like nice people. We just needed to look at some files." The same scene was repeated on 5 other alien worlds. Human teams appeared, downloaded government records, left gifts for the local population, and disappeared. Again, each operation took less than 4 hours and resulted in 0 casualties. Back on Earth, Dr. Kevin Park was analyzing the captured data with growing excitement. "This is amazing," he told Admiral Russell. "The Galactic Council isn't really a military alliance at all. It's just a big bureaucracy that's been coasting on its reputation for centuries." The files revealed that the Council's last real military action had been over 800 years ago. Since then, they had maintained peace through paperwork, economic pressure, and the threat of military action that they had never actually had to use. "Their ships are old, their weapons are outdated, and their soldiers have no combat experience," Dr. Park continued. "Most of their military budget actually goes to building fancy offices and paying for administrative costs." Admiral Russell studied the data with growing amazement. "So they've been bluffing this entire time?" "Completely," Dr. Park confirmed. "They convinced everyone they were powerful by acting confident and keeping their actual capabilities secret. But now we know the truth. The mighty Galactic Council is basically a galaxy-wide filing system with delusions of grandeur. But the most interesting discovery came from the alien communication networks. Within hours of the human raids, reports began coming in from all over the galaxy on Zephyr Prime. Alien workers were sharing human chocolate and playing human music in their offices. On Altair 7, the bird people were watching human movies and asking questions about Earth culture. On Mollusca Central, the slug people were holding coffee tasting parties. "The gifts are working," reported Captain Thompson from his ship. "Alien! Civilians are starting to ask their governments why they're fighting humans who seem so friendly and generous." More importantly, resistance movements were forming on several alien worlds. 3 weeks after the human raids, Ambassador Jake Morrison stood in the Grand Reception Hall of the United Nations building in New Geneva. The hall had been expanded since first contact with aliens, with new sections built specifically for hosting galactic visitors. Today, it was filled with the most powerful leaders from across the galaxy. Chancellor Vexstar walked slowly through the hall, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. His eye stalks drooped with exhaustion and defeat. Behind him came a parade of other alien leaders, all looking equally confused and overwhelmed. President Helen Carter greeted each alien leader personally as they entered. She wore a simple blue dress and a warm smile, looking more like a friendly neighbor than the leader of the galaxy's most powerful military force. "Chancellor Vexstar," she said, extending her hand. "Welcome to Earth. I hope your journey was comfortable." The Chancellor stared at her outstretched hand for several seconds before hesitantly shaking it with one of his own hands. He had been expecting threats or demands, not polite conversation. "Your world is, not what we expected," Vexstar admitted quietly. President Carter smiled. "I hear that a lot. Would you like some coffee while we wait for the others to arrive? It's one of our most popular beverages." As the alien leaders settled into specially designed chairs around a large circular table, they couldn't help but notice how different everything was from their own government buildings. Instead of cold, formal meeting rooms, this place felt warm and welcoming. Sunlight streamed through large windows, and earth plants grew in every corner. The meeting was supposed to be about ending the war, but the aliens were having trouble focusing on serious matters. They kept getting distracted by the amazing things they were experiencing on Earth. Sky-Screech of Victory, who had been released from human custody just days before, was still talking about the incredible food the human prisoners had served him. "They gave us something called pizza," he told the other aliens excitedly. "It was the most delicious thing I have ever tasted." A Molluscan leader named Slime Trail of Wonder was examining a small device that Captain Lavra Green had given him. "This machine can play thousands of different songs," he said in amazement, "and the humans just gave it to me for free." General Dan Foster entered the room carrying a large briefcase. He set it down on the table and opened it, revealing hundreds of documents and data storage devices. "These are copies of all the files we borrowed from your government buildings," he said calmly. "We thought you might want them back." Chancellor Vexstar looked at the briefcase in shock. "You are returning our stolen information?" "We prefer to think of it as borrowed," President Carter said. "We made copies for our own records, but the originals belong to you." Dr. Amy Chin stepped forward with her own collection of materials. "We also prepared some analysis of your military capabilities and strategic positions. We thought it might help you understand why continuing this war would be a bad idea." She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the table. The aliens found themselves looking at detailed maps of their own territory, marked with information that their own intelligence services had never managed to gather. "As you can see," Dr. Chun continued, "we know the location of every military base, every shipyard, and every important facility in Council space. We also know your troop movements, supply lines, and defensive capabilities." The alien leaders stared at the display in growing horror. The humans knew everything about them, while they had known almost nothing about the humans. "How did you gather all this information?" asked Wing Flutter of Confusion, the young Altarian pilot who had been captured at New Frontier. "We've been watching you for 20 years, Dr. Chun replied simply. "Every time you sent us cultural exchanges, trade delegations, or diplomatic Missions, we learned a little more. You taught us your languages, showed us your technology, and told us about your history. You were very helpful. Admiral Kate Russell joined the presentation, bringing up new displays showing human military strength. We currently have active military forces on 53 worlds, with defense fleets positioned throughout this entire region of the galaxy. Our total military strength is approximately 10 times larger than the combined forces of the Galactic Council. 10 times, Vexstar whispered. That's just our regular military, Admiral Russell continued. If we mobilized our civilian population, the number would be much higher. Every human colony has trained militia forces, and every civilian ship can be converted for military use. Colonel Jenny Martinez stepped forward with a smile. But we didn't bring you here to threaten you. We brought you here to offer you something better. The holographic display changed to show new images. These weren't military bases or weapons. Instead, they showed human schools, hospitals, research facilities, and entertainment centers. We'd like to propose a partnership, President Carter said. Instead of ruling over other species, why don't we work together? Humans are very good at solving problems and building things. We think we could help make the galaxy a better place for everyone. Dr. Kevin Park activated another display showing the results of human cultural gifts. Your own people seem to agree. Since we distributed human entertainment and food throughout your territories, we've received over 10 million requests for more. Alien citizens are asking their governments why they're fighting the people who make such wonderful movies and delicious chocolate. The alien leaders looked at each other nervously. It was true that their populations had been asking uncomfortable questions since the humans had left their gifts. Many citizens were wondering why their leaders wanted to fight people who seemed so friendly and generous. What exactly are you proposing? Asked a rock-like alien leader whose name sounded like grinding stones. Full partnership, President Carter replied. Humans become equal members of the Galactic Council, with the same rights and responsibilities as every other species. In exchange, we share our technology, our culture, and our knowledge with everyone. And if we refuse? Chancellor Vexstar asked quietly. General Foster shrugged. Then we keep defending ourselves until you get tired of losing. But that seems like a waste of time and resources for everyone involved. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The humans presented proposal after proposal, each one more generous than the last. They offered to share advanced technology, provide military protection for alien worlds, and even help rebuild the Council's outdated infrastructure. But the real breakthrough came when Captain Levar brought a group of alien prisoners to meet with their leaders. These were the soldiers and pilots who had been captured during the failed attack on New Frontier. Wing Flutter of Confusion spoke for the group. Honored leaders, he said. The humans treated us better than our own military treats its soldiers. They gave us comfortable places to sleep, excellent food, and entertainment we had never experienced before. Many of us don't want to go home. They also taught us new things, added a young Zephyrian engineer. I learned more about technology in 3 weeks of human captivity than I learned in 10 years of council education. Chancellor Vexstar looked around the table at his fellow leaders. They all wore the same expression of defeat and confusion. The war they had started with such confidence had turned into a complete disaster. Worse, their own people were starting to prefer the enemy to their own government. We accept your terms, Vexstar said finally. The treaty signing took place in the same hall where the negotiations had been held. Representatives from every human colony world attended, along with alien leaders and thousands of citizens from both sides. Ambassador Jake Morrison signed for humanity, using the same calm confidence he had shown during that first meeting on the council station. As he finished writing his name, he looked up at Chancellor Vexstar and smiled. Was that so hard? He asked. 6 months later, Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council station. But now, instead of being treated like a junior member, he was greeted with respect and friendship by aliens. From dozens of different species, the station itself had changed dramatically. Human engineers had helped upgrade the old systems, making everything more efficient and reliable. Human entertainment centers had been added, where aliens could watch Earth movies, listen to human music, and try foods from different human cultures. Jake stopped at a small cafe where Chancellor Vexstar was sitting alone, reading something on a tablet computer. "Good book?" Jake asked, sitting down across from the alien leader. "Human detective novel," Vexstar replied without looking up. "I am trying to solve the mystery before the main character does." "So far, the human is winning," Jake laughed. "What's the score now?" "He has solved 15 mysteries. I have solved 3. Vexstar looked up from his tablet. "How do humans make such complex stories?" "Practice," Jake said. "We've been telling stories for thousands of years. It's one of our favorite activities." Vexstar set down his tablet and looked out the large window at the space around the station. Human and alien ships moved together in perfect coordination, working on joint projects and shared missions. "I have been thinking," Vexstar said slowly, "about that first day when we declared war on your species. What about it? You asked us if that was all we had to offer. At the time, I thought you were being insulting.